Hey guys, welcome to the very last class of Spain facing the 21st century. It's the last. It seemed like a very long semester, but we're getting to an end. Remember that next week it's our exam. Actually, tomorrow I'm going to be posting a mock exam, so you can practice the pretty much how it's going to look like, that you can access it, how the time limit works, etc., etc. So it will be available on Blackboard for 24 hours. And also on Wednesday, I'm going to do a small review for the exam and going to try to give you the hints of what is going to be important. You know that the model of the exam is going to be the same as the one in the midterm. So, and in that one you did well, so I expect the same. So let's get started with today's class. Today's class is about the current state of Spanish politics and focusing on two events. On the one hand, the 2019 elections, and you can see in this case is actually plural because there were two national elections. And also, I'm going to briefly talk about the rise of Vox. I've already talked a lot about PSOE, PP, their history, and I've also talked about Ciudadanos and Podemos. And the fifth national party in Spain is Vox. So I'm going to mention it, and I'm going to tell you a little bit of what Vox is and what are the similarities with Vox with other European political parties. So let's get started. You remember we left it last week with Pedro Sánchez being elected president after a vote of no confidence. So it was not through elections, but actually the vote in Congress to vote down Mariano Rajoy also meant Pedro Sánchez became president after all that long journey. However, the majority in parliament was rather weak. I mean, he got the support of very different groups for that vote of no confidence. And in Spain, I think I've mentioned this in class before, to govern, you need parliament at least to pass the budget every year. In Spain, it's not that we enter a lockdown. And in Spain, what happens is that the budget of the previous year gets extended for another year. However, you cannot properly implement your social policy or your fiscal policy or economic policy without without voting a new budget. And in the early spring of 2019, Pedro Sánchez saw how he was unable to get his budget passed. That, together with these opinion polls, actually, if you look at the opinion polls, if we go 2018, when Pedro Sánchez became president, was here. Actually, from that moment, we can see how PSOE, that is a red line here, it stopped performing better and better. And we see that actually the polling, it's actually good for PSOE. They're coming from a much worse result compared to Partido Popular, that is a blue line, than what the polls are saying. So actually for Pedro Sánchez, it's not a bad idea to call for a snap election. It's not very risky at that point. It's unlikely he's not going to be re-elected Presidente del Gobierno. So actually with these two factors, on the one hand, the inability to pass a budget, and on the other hand, the positive polling, Pedro Sánchez decides to call for snap elections. And traditional elections, well, we have four parties. Remember that two-party system is more or less forgotten already. So it's the first time actually that we had four candidates in a debate. And this was something very new, very interesting. And these were their profiles. On the one hand, Pablo Casado for Partido Popular. He was the successor of Mariano Rajoy after primaries in the party. Pablo Iglesias for Podemos to the left. Pedro Sánchez, PSOE, who was center-left. And Albert Rivera, Ciudadanos, center-right. And actually quite interesting, during the campaign already, Albert Rivera, Ciudadanos, said that he was not going to form a coalition with Pedro Sánchez. It was not possible because at that time, because of the polling, actually Albert Rivera was disputing the leadership of the right wing to Pablo Casado. The results of the elections in April were as follows. Actually quite interesting, because in these results you can perfectly see how the two-party system was gone. It was very similar in a sense. By the end of the day, PP and PSOE swapped places, and actually PSOE came first with 123 seats. PP got the worst result of its history with 66 seats. Ciudadanos fell 300,000 votes short of PP because of the electoral system. Actually, PP was even better off, then Podemos, Vox, but it was quite a fragmented parliament without a clear majority. Actually, the clearest majority will have been Ciudadanos and PSOE, but because of Ciudadanos actually during the campaign said that they were not going to form a coalition with PSOE, this possibility was ruled out, and agreements between Podemos and PSOE were also not possible. Actually, during the summer, they were trying to negotiate a coalition government, but they were not able to reach that agreement. Actually, PSOE offered them to enter the government. Podemos did not accept it, and Podemos was willing to accept it, but PSOE was already making electoral calculations, because actually during the summer, PSOE was doing, these are the polls in the summer, July, August, was doing even better than the election. So actually for Pedro Sanchez, with the inability to form a government at this time, actually it seemed like a good idea to even call for another elections. He thought that he could actually improve the results and actually could ease his, the way to form a government, ease him the work in parliament and forming coalitions and gathering the votes of others. You see how through the polling, actually PP is getting strong. Vox is actually one rising, and we'll see in a second what happens, because what happens is actually that the picture is pretty much the same. We see how in this debate there were 5 candidates, because Pablo Abascal joins the debate representing Vox. First time the far right wing, populist right wing is present in a debate, and the others are exactly the same. So actually, when you have the same conditions, normally you get a very similar picture, and that's what happened. Actually, PSOE ended up losing 3 seats in parliament. PP did much better. Ciudadanos almost disappeared from 57 to 10 seats in parliament. Podemos lost 7 seats, and Vox, more than double the results they got in April. But it's more or less the balance of power. It's more or less the same. The coalitions you can form with this parliament are more or less the same. But at this time, by the end of the second elections, you get the same results. Quite likely, they're going to reach some kind of agreement, and that's actually what happened. The same week that after the week after the elections, actually Pedro Sanchez and Pablo Iglesias announced. Actually, said Pablo Abascal is Santiago Abascal before. Pablo Iglesias and Pedro Sanchez signed an agreement for a coalition government that between the 155, if you add them both, seats that Podemos and PSOE have in parliament, they're going to try to gather support of other political parties to form a coalition government. What was impossible to be done, to reach during the summer, was done in less than a week during the fall. So actually, quite intriguing how politics sometimes works. Sorry. Actually, but as I told you, it was not enough with PSOE and Podemos with their votes. They could not form a 176 votes majority. So they needed to find the support of others, or at least the abstention. Remember that actually, in Spain, you don't need an absolute majority. By having a simple majority, more yes and no's, it's enough to name a president of the government. So actually, negotiations began, particularly with nationalists, because it was impossible to form any kind of reach any kind of agreement with right-wing parties. And in the picture, for example, you can see them with Esquerra Republicana de Catalunya, that is an pro-independency party from Catalonia that had 16 seats. So what was the results? Actually, in January 2020, so we are already talking about this year, they got the support of parliament, but you can see the majority was only 2 votes. Big enough, and you see that there are several parties besides PSOE and Podemos. We also have PNV from the Basque Country, Más País, that is what used to be a part of Podemos, Nueva Canarias, Teruel Existe, Bloque Nacionalista Gallego, while other parties opposing it, voting against, for example, pro-independence parties from Catalonia, or the right wing with Ciudadanos, Vox and PP, other nationalists. And actually, this is the key, that Esquerra Republicana and Bildu abstained. They did not vote against. So actually that allowed Pedro Sanchez to become president once again, this time being elected directly from the elections. And this is more or less what we have right now in Spain. We don't know if this government is going to last 4 years because they should go up until 2024. It's difficult because, as I told you, it's key whether they're going to be able to pass the budget or not. If they are unable to get the budget approved, quite likely they're going to have to call snap elections. By the end of the day, we're still living with that budget that we mentioned last Wednesday, the one that Mariano Rajoy passed in 2018. So this was pretty much it about the 2019 election. And we're going to have a break, and after the break, we're going to talk about Vox, this political party that is becoming more and more important in Spanish politics. See you in a minute.